Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today for Sketchbook Sunday, I am going to work on a subject matter that I usually don't draw, and that would be architecture. But I saw this photo of this old gas station slash grocery store in my artist photo reference book. I'll link that down below in case you are interested in finding this awesome set of reference books, secondhand, on Amazon. They're kind of hit or miss, but they're fantastic books. Anyway, I thought that would be really fun to do with gouache, and I just received this set to review. This is from Artsy, and it is their new 24 Jelly Cup gouache set, and I was curious to see how they would be compared to the other ones that I've used. And here you can see I'm just kind of like taking the lids off and scraping the excess back into the pots there. The neat thing about this palette is that it's got this foam squishy pad on the lid, so when you lock it down, it is going to prevent leaking. So if you did throw it in your bag or something, you would get paint on the squishy foam lid, but they wouldn't like cross-contaminate. So I thought that was kind of a neat idea, and also a neat idea for hopefully preventing them from drying out, as a lot of people mentioned that they were concerned about that when I reviewed similar sets of Jelly Cup gouache. Quality-wise, I'd say they're about the same as the other Jelly Cup gouache that I've reviewed, very similar to the Arteza gouache. I recommend both. Just depends, do you want a Jelly Cup style or do you want tubes? I actually like having the paint all ready to go. I mean, before they came out with these types of paints, I would put my tube paints in a fish and tackle box so that I could have them kind of ready to go. If your gouache dries out, it's not a big deal. You can just spritz it with water and reconstitute it, because it is essentially an opaque watercolor. I'm sketching here in my Hahnemühle toned beige watercolor book. This is, I believe it's called A5. It's about 5 by 8 inches. And I like the toned paper. I find it really pleasurable to work on. Not so much for watercolor, but for gouache and color pencil and oil pastel and things like that. So I just basically am doing a sketch here with a mechanical pencil. This is one of those pretty dark 0.9 millimeter Bic mechanical pencils. I usually go for the 0.7, but I had a bunch of these from back to school supplies last year, and I thought I would use them. And plus I thought it would show up really well in the video for you to see the drawing. As you can see, I'm just kind of like getting the basic shapes down and trying to get the perspective correct. And you can kind of see that book that I was going by. And I also wanted to get some kind of scale in by putting some foam lines and street poles and stuff in there. The picture is pretty closely cropped in that book that I have. So I kind of had to, as I expanded the drawing, kind of fudge it a little bit, but that's fine. I mean, it's landscapey stuff, not a big deal. Architecture I struggle with. I really struggle with architecture, so I thought this would be a nice excuse to kind of improve something that I struggle with. So I started off with kind of like a periwinkle, kind of light blue grayish color, and then I added in some, I would say it's like a cerulean blue on top, and kind of blended it in. And now I'm going in with some white, because the colors were a lot more intense than I expected them to be right out of the pans there. And this is just to kind of give some clouds and tone my sky down a little bit. I really like the Jelly Cup style paints. When I first used them, I was worried that I was going to contaminate them. But it's really not that big of a deal. I obviously mix on a glass plate, and I think you could probably use that foam pad as in the lid as a mixing area, and that's probably what I would do if I was out and about. But I just decided to use my ceramic palette, so I would keep it a little bit neater. I think actually getting some palette paper would be handy if you just took cut some palette paper to fit the inside lid, and then just kind of stuck a piece on there before you went out painting. I think that would probably be the most ideal thing, or a piece of wax paper or something like that. That way you would have a little bit of an easier cleanup. I'm blocking in the trees in the background. There was also a really big kind of bare tree right smack dab in the middle behind the sign in the center of the building, but I didn't like that. I didn't think it added to the composition, so I left it out. And that's what you can do with your paintings. You can omit or add to, or simplify or complicate, do whatever you want to do. I did like the look of the bare branches on the deciduous trees. I thought that looked really kind of vacant, and you see these I see it all the time because I live in a fairly rural area. So when I'm driving home to visit my parents, there's always these old gas stations, convenience stores, like along the road that I travel, that have just gone out of business, like, and they just look so decayed and old-timey and just like a bygone era. And I think that's what I wanted to capture with this picture. I like old, I don't know if you'd call it wouldn't really be urban decay, but it would be kind of like, oh, this town had something else going on, 20 years ago. There was a different vitality in it that isn't here now. I think we're going to see a lot more of that, unfortunately. So I drive through a town called Unity, which I love that name, when I go to visit my parents, and their college, I think the college there is trying to sell, and I think what's going to happen when that college goes? What's going to happen to all these little pizza joints and like little convenience stores and things like that? And so it's kind of sad. I like the kind of American nostalgia. I love stopping at a gas station that has the old-fashioned pumps. You just fill up your car, then you go in and pay. I love that. I hate using a credit card at a gas station. I'd much rather pump my gas and go in and pay cash. So, I mean, I kind of bristle against the change, against the modernization. And when I saw this picture of a gas station, I feel like this could be the gas station in anybody's hometown. I remember growing up and going to the general store. We would go there. We wouldn't go to the supermarket, every day. We'd go, maybe every couple of weeks, but we'd go into the general store, and there would be a meat counter, and there would be produce, and there would be, you'd see the people in your community, you'd see the people in your neighborhood. And I think it's lost. I think it's really lost nowadays. And especially in times of pandemic when we're all trying to avoid people, I really miss that sense of community. So I guess that's what I was thinking about, and why I was feeling very sentimental and wanted to paint this this dilapidated grocery store / gas station. And I mean, there's the neon lights are still on in the windows, which you'll see me paint in a little bit. So maybe it's still in business. I hope so. But it still looks kind of, I love the payphone. There's a payphone out front. That's what that brown box is. That's going to be a payphone. I don't know, there's something very charming about that, something very sad when you see those, mom and pop stores get sold to either just completely get abandoned, or you see them getting sold to like some big chains. It's just sad, because I'm old enough to remember growing up with, local, mom and pop businesses. And it's just kind of sad to see that go. It's sad to see places where, you would have your regulars, and that would be a meeting place, and people would get together, maybe not even on purpose, but, it'd just be a place for people in town to see one another. And now with people working from home and not able to, go out to little stores, let alone you wouldn't be loitering at them, it's just kind of, it's kind of a sense of community that I feel has kind of fallen away in some respects, in a lot of respects, really. But anyway, I guess I was feeling very sentimental. I love old gas stations, old gas pumps, all that vintage stuff anyway. So it was a nice excuse to kind of practice my architectural drawing skills and do something different. And honestly, I have to say, I don't think anything is any harder to draw or paint than anything else. I think it really depends on what you're interested in, because if you're interested in it, you're going to have an easier time painting it and an easier time learning it, because, you're going to push through because you're interested. It's kind of like, probably learning math or English. One isn't harder than the other, but if you are interested in one, you're going to have an easier time learning it, because you're going to be engaged and focused and whatnot. So if you're trying to brush up on some style of art that you struggle with, try to find something that really speaks to you. So if you like to paint, if you're not very good at painting flowers, but you'd like to paint flowers, then try to find some flowers that really interest you, or plants that really interest you. Find something that's really engaging enough that it's going to keep your interest as you kind of go through the work of learning how to draw it. Same thing with portraits, or with animals, or whatever the subject matter is that you're having trouble with. I'm using a liner brush here. These brushes that I'm using with a silver handle are the Zen All Media brushes by Royal and Leinickel. They're very similar. I think they might be the same exact. They're very similar than the Menta All Media brushes. I think the Zens are sold in more places, but I really like them. They're very inexpensive. You can get them in sets or individually. I think they run about $3 to $4 or $5 per brush if you're buying them individually, so they're not very expensive, and they are excellent for gouache. They're all media, but I think people tend to buy them for acrylic painting, but they are just stiff enough to handle the gouache medium. You can get really fine lines, like with that liner brush. I use them with watercolor too sometimes, but they are such a great value for a gouache painting. And with gouache, it's such a gentle medium that they should last you a really, really long time. Whereas acrylic painting, your acrylic paint can get up in the ferrule and dry and just, lessen the lifetime of a brush. Gouache doesn't do that. Gouache is just like a watercolor, just like that you're applying thickly and opaquely. So I highly recommend those brushes if you're looking for something for your gouache. And if you want to keep your brushes separate, you can, that silver handle, that shiny black handle that's kind of metallic is easy to differentiate between other brushes. And their mental ones are great too. They have a teal handle. So if you want to find something that looks a little bit different, I really like those brushes. They work really well. So lettering is not my strong suit, but I mean, these are just basic block letters. I just basically drew out my letters. I just tried to keep them balanced, and it worked pretty well. I was just going for keeping my letters between the two posts on the ends, and it worked out pretty well. I did have to flip it around and kind of hit the starts and stops of my letters a little bit just to give them a little bit of thickness. And I thought I wanted to see a little bit of the background through, like next to the post on the side of the gas station, so I did just put a slice of green in there. And I'll have to fatten up that post on the opposite side just to make it work, but I'll do that in a bit. So for the neon, all I got to do, because I have so much shading in there, is just use like pastel shades or white on its own or red on its own, and it's going to look like a neon sign because I have that contrast. So if you're wondering how to get that glowing look, it's just, like anything else, you just need to make sure you have that contrast and really trust what your eyes tell you a value of something is. A lot of times we don't believe it. We don't paint shadows as dark as they are. We don't, we want to, I guess we want to make sense of things and do things that our brain tells us, but no, we got to do what our eyes tell us if you want it to look right. Now, this isn't a super detailed picture. It's, it's definitely painterly and a little whimsical, but I'm really pleased with how it came out. Here I'm putting in the foam poles. I think that this is really nice if you're doing some sort of architecture like this, to get something in that will fade off to a vanishing point, or at least kind of get smaller in the distance so that you can have that bit of scale and perspective. So when I could see just kind of like one phone wire peeking out on my reference photo, and then like another almost like, I think, lamppost. So I'm like, yeah, I really want to get that in there so it can give me a little bit of scale going off into the distance. So that's what I did there. The white looked too stark, so I added some gray to shadow. And these colors mixed really well, I will tell you that. I think if you have any of the other jelly cup style of gouache paints, you really don't need to get these, but they're definitely decent if you're looking for something like that. I do like the fact that the lid seals and that it's got a carrying handle on it, because these sets can be a little on the heavy side because you've got 30 milliliters of paint times however many colors. It's like twice, like say like 15 milliliter tubes are pretty standard for gouache and watercolor, so it's twice as much. So it's, it can get kind of heavy. It's nice to have that little carrying handle, and the carrying handle keeps your paint upright, so then you don't even have to worry about spilling. So here I'm just kind of revamping my shadows because I realized I do need them a little bit darker, and that's going to give me a little bit more depth underneath and give the gas station so you can kind of see how you'd like pull into it, kind of push that store part back and give it a little bit more room between the front posts and the building itself. And I really like those dramatic shadows. I really like the layering ability of this, although you can go in and rework and blend back into stuff you've already done, but you can layer if you're going in gently with just like, your regular Taklon brushes. So it's versatile. I think this would be a great media if you are looking to maybe you like acrylic but you hate the cleanup and the mess, or you like oils but you hate the cleanup and the mess. I feel like it's kind of like the best of both worlds. You get watercolor cleanup, but you can get the look of an acrylic or oils depending on how you apply it. Of course, the one thing that I would say is the caveat to gouache is kind of famous for not having great light fastness, and a student quality gouache like this It has no light fastness information, no pigment information. So unless it's out there somewhere on the internet that you can look up that I don't know about, I wouldn't trust this on like a wall painting, but for your sketchbook work, for practice, absolutely. Generally, I think these jelly cup style gouaches were given to school children in like China, Japan, Korea, your Asian countries where it's much more of a popular hobby to paint, and it's taken more, I guess, more seriously in school. So that's kind of where that style comes from, but I think it's very handy, and I really like this format for paint. Of course, like I said, if you already have one of the other sets, definitely it's going to be about the same. I wouldn't go out and buy this one, but if you don't have one yet, yeah, go for the style and the colors that you like. This set is lacking a strong ultramarine blue. It's got kind of like a cobalt blue, but it doesn't have like that really intense ultramarine. It's got a really intense like phthalo type. Phthalo Prussian blue type color. But I didn't have that side. I didn't have any issues mixing anything I needed to mix. So I don't think it's a huge drawback, but as someone who uses ultramarine blue a lot in their work, that's something I thought was worth mentioning. But all in all, I thought this paint was great. I'm not going to do a full review on this because I've reviewed so many student grade gouache sets lately, especially the jelly cup style. So I would say, yeah, they're as good as the Himi and the Arctics and the other artsy set that they sold, which was also the Himi gouache. Very, very comparable, if not identical. Just check out the colors and the sets you're considering and get the one that is best for you. The price on this was less than some of the others for what you get, so that might be something to consider. Of course, the prices fluctuate, so click the link in the video description if you want to see what it costs today. I think it's around $25, and there was a coupon, so you check that out. Well, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget, I still have the 50% off special on my watercolor glass class. If you want to check that out, I'll put a link and a coupon code for that as well. Thanks for watching. Until next time, happy crafting!